of the IGR committee. We'll move to item number 2 on the agenda review and minutes review. Last set of minutes was July 7th meeting. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda for today, or any additions, corrections, or modifications from the minutes from the July 7th meeting?
I have one item just for the agenda to add as a decision-making action, and that is related to the League of Oregon Cities voting member, and Mayor Venus is going to be at the conference and can fulfill that. So I'd like to add that to the agenda after the number 3. So number 4 would be LOC voting member.
Okay, sounds good.
Chair, are you looking for a motion to approve the minutes?
I am. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Chair, I move that we approve the July 7th, 2023 minutes as provided in the packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved by Councilor Gross, seconded by Councilor Ye. Any questions, any additions or changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand either way. Motion carries 3-0. And now we're on to item number 3. IGR operating agreement process, the memo and draft. You want to take it away, Ethan?
Thanks, Counselor. So we discussed this at our last meeting, and what is in front of you is a memo and then also a legislative draft copy of the revised document. And so, as you know, the city council operating agreements have been, there's a work session prior to the council break. There's going to be a work session when council resumes here later this month. And this will be an addendum or an addition on into that. That's the intention for this document. And the reason why we're bringing it forward is, one, because the council full operating agreements are updated, but also because the IGR operating agreements haven't been updated since 2008. And so a lot has changed since then. And I worked to categorize the changes into 3 different areas, and then color coded those in the memo that was provided to you as well. And so I'm just going to walk through those, and please feel free if you've got any questions. But the first one is in gray, and this is the IGR process changes that were approved by the city council in 2013, but they were never codified within this process. So there was a resolution passed in 2013 that said we're going to do the IGR process a little bit differently, and that's since 2013 has been the process that we've utilized, but it's never been put back on into the operating agreements. And so you basically had an operating agreements that was old, the resolution was passed, we were using the resolution, and so there was just going back to clean that on up. So anything that's in gray was approved during that, in that resolution by the full city council. Number 2, in green is updated operating procedures based upon organizational priorities, available resources, or new information. And so these are things that are, you know, and I'll give the examples as we go through here, but updated information. So the state legislative session schedules, if you recall back in 2008, the legislature was still meeting on a biannual basis. It was not meeting on an annual basis. And so the language within the operating agreements referenced that as a special sessions rather than the short sessions that then were approved by organization. Efficiency of process, prioritization, and so grant review within the exists in the 2008 version. Grant review and duties were still part of the IGR committee's role. And since we've really moved away from that, we spent time talking with the city attorney. And this was a number of years ago when Glenn Klein was still the city attorney and John Reese. And Glenn was very clear to say the authority in the charter is vested in the city manager to authorize grants. It's not the city council. The city council, and John really wanted to make sure the council was engaged in like understanding what was going on, or at least the IGR committee. And so we kept doing that, but then when we really looked at our time and effort and amount of resources spent as we were prioritizing resources, there was this focus to say, let's just focus in on having the grant reviews be internal, work through executive directors, and if there's anything that ever comes that is contentious or could be a policy issue the council wants to talk about or the IGR wants to talk about, we can always bring that up. So that's an example of that priority. And then there's just some recommended edits for greater clarity, just the 2008 version and the resolution from 2013. Both had some grammatical, just style things that if we cleaned on up and just made it clearer of what the process was. So those would be in there. The third and last one is then the IGR committee engagement with council. And so those were processes that, as you all remember, we've gone to council, full council, and have gotten feedback from your colleagues related to IGR and full council engagement. We put together some updates related to how that would operate, brought those back to council, they were supported. And so those changes in engagement have then been incorporated on in, those are in yellow. So that's the kind of the overall summary of that. And we can go through each of these. I'm just going to go off of the summary table. And if we need to, we can reference on into the full document. But in section 1, we removed grant management from IGR committee overview. So we spoke about that previously. Are there questions on that? And I'll ask that on anyone. Any questions? Keep moving through. Okay. On section 8, revise for accuracy regarding the legislative sessions. So I touched on that previously. And then on number 8, remove non-essential historic information. So it was just trying to really clarify and get this to be a much cleaner policy document. Number 9, edited the process description to be aligned with council adopted policy. So we really just revised that for clarity in section 9. Additionally, in section 9, we removed the IGR committee approval of a final bill. And so I want to touch on this one really quickly. Under the resolution that was passed in 2013, which is resolution 5081, streamlines the IGR committee process. Once the IGR and council provide guidance for a policy bill, the IGR manager, under the direction of the city manager, assumes responsibility to implement the policy. And so what that looks like is that, for instance, there was legislation, I'm going to draw a total blank, but recently we had legislation where you directed me to go get a bill done. We wrote the bill and we got it done. We never brought the final bill back to this committee to say, does this work for you? We feel that because those bills tend to just go through multiple iterations, we take the council's and the IGR committee's guidance as the policy that we want to accomplish, and then we do the administration of that. So that is why that one is to be in there, to just remove that last process out of that last step out of the process.
And to chime in, as those bills are going through different iterations, you do present us in regular reports with the -2 changes, the -3 changes as you go through. So the IGR does get a chance to.
Yeah, we
See
go
it.
through those updates as Ethan presents them.
Right.
And if whenever there's a substantive policy change, then I definitely come back and seek guidance to say, okay, this is outside of what has been, directed and approved. So where are you on this?
Right.
And if it's just been, thankfully in the past few years, we haven't had any split decisions, so it sticks with IGR. Okay, moving on, good. Number 10, revised IGR committee legislative. Okay. Number 10, revised IGR committee legislative review process, and so this is really just the main part of taking the 2013 resolution 581 and dumping it on in and gutting out all of the existing processes, and same with section 11. And so there's a lot of red on the legislative document on this because we pulled out the priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 bills because we haven't been doing that. We've said, is it a priority bill or not? If it's a priority bill, we support it or we oppose it, and we're going to lobby it. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Nope.
No,
I have a procedural question. Are you looking for approval from this body, or do we take this back to the full council?
Great question, both. We're going to seek approval today, and we've already got the AIS drafted. It'll be, this part is gonna get tucked on into Brooks' full AIS. If there's enough time, we're gonna do it all in one package with council. If not, then we would come back and IGR, this section would be done separately. Ideally, we could do it all in the fall work session that's scheduled for the operating agreements. And that way it's got, yeah, you're all stamp approval on it.
I was just trying to understand where our limits of responsibility were.
yeah. Yeah, I think our body, goes through this, approves this first, and then we take it back to full council.
So what we will provide as is basically these two documents, and then the AIS has got some of the language in it, and we would just say, if you approve today with no changes, then use for it.
I really like how you laid this out. You made it very simple.
Okay, then on to 12, adding the new section 12. And so this was getting on into the responding to councils and members of council's interest to have more engagement and setting up a bit of a more formal process. And so we provided that for section 12, which is the communicating with city council, and just overview of what the process is right now, the procedure.
That addresses Alan and Mike's concerns.
Correct. To date. And then on 14, the amended grants and agreement section, we revised that based upon kind of what we talked about in number 1, moving the grant management from IGR committee and just getting it clear that the IGR committee and council can always pull a grant and we can discuss it, but we're not going to bring the grants to the committee for approval, and that it's going to be an administrative function under the direction of the city manager, the authority of the city manager. And that's it.
Forward.
Mayor, do you have anything for the good of the order on this?
I don't, I just want to appreciate that after so many years of not updating this formally, I'm relieved to see it all actually in print, and there was a lot of red lines. So yeah, no, I want to thank you for the work on this, because it was high time that we put it in a final form.
So I think it's time for us to entertain a motion to move this forward. Do we have a motion?
Sure, I can make one. I move to approve at this level of the IGR committee operating agreement process update and refer to council.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or raise your hand, signify by saying aye, either one. So 1, 2, 3. we are unanimous. So the vote is 3-0. And we will move on. The motion has been approved. So let's move on to item number 4, which is upcoming events. So Ethan, you want to give us a quick overview of those events coming up with LOC and other things that are happening?
Yeah, first, I do have that addition for number 4 for LOC voting, and so.
Oh, okay, that's right, for the mayor.
Yep, and so the LOC conference, and LOC has an annual conference. This year it's in Eugene. I sent the information on out, and I'll address that when we talk about upcoming events. But part of that agenda for LOC is is having each member city provide a delegate to vote on who the board of directors for LOC will be. And so Mayor Venice is going to be at the conference and has said that she would fulfill that duty. And I wanted to bring it to IGR to have the discussion and also just get formal approval from IGR to have Mayor Venice as that delegate, as the voting delegate for the city of Eugene.
Do we have a motion to support Mayor Venice being the voting delegate for the LOC conference in October?
Okay,
I need a motion, don't I?
Randy's been doing such a good job.
move to
Do
appoint.
you want me to do it?
Yeah, either way. I was just getting ready to start it, but go for it.
No, go ahead, go ahead. There's a
Okay.
lag. There's a lag, I think.
Oh, okay. Move to appoint Mayor Venice as our delegate to represent the IGR committee or council at the League of Oregon Cities upcoming meeting,
I think it's to be our voting delegate.
our voting delegate.
Yes,
Does that work for a motion?
I've served in that capacity.
Okay, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 3. Now I got 3. 3-0, and the motion has been approved.
Well, thank you all.
It's a tough group.
It's a hard campaign.
So Ethan,
All my supporters.
Well fought.
back to item 4.
Okay, so
Item 5, I guess we call it now.
just to give an overview of some of the upcoming things, and then also a little bit of the session prep discussion. So legislative days are coming on up, September 27th through the 29th. Senator Manning has responded to Mayor Venice and is putting together a panel on city homelessness. Mayor Venice will be leading that, and we're working on bringing in a few other mayors to join Mayor Venice to talk specifically about a city's perspective on unhoused emergency and response, and not have it be cluttered by another level of government's perspective. And so that'll be coming on up, and we're working on getting the moving parts of that ready. There will also likely be discussions on the recent revenue forecast, which I sent an email on out. We won't really know what that's going to do for state budgets. It's a good forecast, so we are hopeful that when we focus in on our priorities again of getting direct funding for the city of Eugene, that there might be discretionary dollars in the mid-year of the biennium to be able to secure some of those for our priorities. And right now, I think the other big thing, and I'll get into this for what the session is going to come on up with, but we'll get a taste of what's going to be coming along for the session. As I mentioned previously, the LOC, or is there any questions about that before I move on? Nope. Okay. The LOC conference.
Ethan,
Yes.
yeah, one question, maybe you or Mayor Venice can elaborate a little bit more on this. where are we with the state as far as homelessness is concerned? I know that we had some issues back during session about the proposal that came with the mayor's group to the legislature, and kind of the difference in opinion from the governor's office and what the mayor's group had proposed and said to both the governor and the legislature about the city's role in homelessness. Can you update us on that? And I note that I did read a comment from Councilor Leach. I believe she was in a debate, expressing her displeasure with the response of the state to city's needs in this area.
Mayor, do you want to?
Yeah, so, and maybe Ethan will get to this as well. So that was part of my conversation with Senator Manning was, one of our kind of follow-up to the legislature talking about our frustration that we did everything we needed to do. We worked with the other cities, we presented this case, and that we still were not heard, and what could we do next? And so the senator offered to include us in the legislative days in this way. I'm also expecting, and maybe you're going here with the LOC, that we will have this conversation at the League of Oregon Cities. Is that correct? That we are.
I believe it'll come up, but I also believe that I'll talk about the HPAC, which is the Housing Production Advisory Council, which is steroid right now. So I'm not sure at LOC what's going to happen.
Okay.
So if I can respond to that, as Mayor Venus said, talking with our delegation, we've been talking to the delegation to try to get a better understanding of why we didn't get funds. Early on, the governor and legislative leadership said, we don't like the Oregon Mayor's Association. We understand your need. We understand what you're saying, but we don't support it. So it's really clear from the get-go that we are an outlier. And we worked our channels to really seek out direct funding to Eugene, and we will continue to do that. And so I think that while there's a coalition that we'll continue to be part of statewide, our needs are different than other cities across the state. Our situation is different. And while we are also in cooperation and collaborating, we also need to recognize that there can be a pathway for us to secure funds to, as I understand it, there's a $5 million gap in this biennial budget for unhoused response. And that's what we're going to continue to request state support for. If we don't get it, we don't get it, but that's been our priority. And that's what I wanted to get at when we talk about our session priorities a little bit later in the agenda.
Okay.
So the LOC conference is coming up October 12th through the 14th. We've got a number of tours. If you're interested in attending, please let myself know. And so Councilor Bevins is. So if anyone else is, just let me know. And also I'll bring this on up as part. Well, actually, I'll add it to the items of interest and updates that council gives it. I'll write that for you, Councilor Evans. You can share that with full council in case there's an interest there.
Can I just jump in for just a second, which is, I also think at items, it would be great to encourage counselors to actually attend the LOC. Not
Yes.
go to the whole thing, but I think it's in our hometown, doesn't require any travel. It's kind of a poor showing to have none of the local, I mean, Greg, I know we can count on you for sure, but I think a good turnout sends a good message to our colleagues across the state. So just encourage you to make time for at least a couple of sessions.
So we don't need to be there for the whole.
You don't need to attend the whole thing, but pick and choose a couple of things. So you're just, so you're there.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Now, we would at least appreciate a couple of cameos from Councilor Groves and Lady Macbeth.
Yeah, there you go.
I think we can make that happen.
Thank you.
I do too. I just wasn't sure if it's all or nothing.
No,
No,
you can come and go.
yeah, and what I'd like to be able to do is if somebody's gonna go for a few different of the sessions. Great, we'll spend the money to get you the registration. If you want to show up for the conference ballroom where where all of the kind of just what is it called, where all the booths and networking.
Yeah.
That's always open because it's part of the graduate where the bar is and right, and so you can always go in there and walk through and mingle and talk to folks, and if that's the extent of it, great. And we won't pay for that because you're not going for the full conference and engaging in the content. So I think that's like if for if you've got a really busy schedule and you just want to stop by, Cameo, talk to folks, shake hands, right? So reach out now and let me know what your interests are. We can figure out the best way to do that and also recognize we've got a tight budget this year.
And Greg knows everybody, so you can go glad hand and
Yeah.
follow Greg around and he'll introduce you to everybody.
Yeah.
Right,
There
Greg?
you go.
Yeah,
Ethan, are we involved in running this conference or is it just being hosted here?
The latter, we're helping, I'm sitting on the steering committee, and so I've helped to coordinate a number of the tours. Cherish has been helping a ton with scheduling for the mayor and scheduling for outreach. We've been working with U of O is assisting. And so it's really the LOC said, we're gonna host it here. We're gonna have a steering committee. You can join. And they come and they ask us for support. We respond and go from there. So it's all LOC and we're assisting where it's appropriate and they need help.
Do we have any idea what the economic impact is for
Okay.
this? Gene?
I don't have an idea of what that is gonna be, so.
That would be a good thing.
I think we have some history around this because the LOC can only be hosted in 4 places in the state: Portland Metro, the Bend area, and then here in Eugene. Otherwise, there aren't enough conference facilities that are large enough to host this size of a conference. So we usually get it every 3 years, and I think we might be on a 4-year rotation now with the new conference center opening in Washington County.
I'll ask and see what numbers they.
But they do keep numbers on what the economic impact is for the delegates coming in and spending money in hotels and restaurants here.
I just think that would be a good thing to put somewhere, whether it's on our website or items from council on a Monday night. Something that this is actually having a positive impact on our community.
Okay, moving forward, 2024 session prep schedule. And so, we've got basically October, November, December, January meetings between now and the start of session in February. And so that's 4 meetings. And my plan would be that, and I want to have that kind of discussion right now with you. My plan would be in October, bring back what the draft priorities and policies are. We work through those, and ideally at the October meeting, we get adoption, move forward. Pull that into a council work session in October, early November. Got it ideally in late October. And we've got the ability to come back in November meeting, discuss if council says XYZ versus just go straight ahead with it. So then we've got the opportunity to have the meeting in November and then come back again if we need to for council. I mean, this is how it's been in the past few years. And so I want to be cognizant that if we do it, we get IGR approval of the agenda in October. We then move it to council in October. It comes back to IGR for refinement, and then it goes back to council in November. We're still got December and January to be able to do what we need to do from the standard, from that standpoint. So that is my kind of intention over the course of over the fall and early winter. Sounds good.
Ethan,
Yes.
what
Okay.
what are the major issues that are going to come up on the horizon for the short session in February? Do you have-
Excellent segue. So what I would propose for the city of Eugene, our priorities would be the same priorities that we had, the top 3 priorities we had during the long session, which would be direct allocation of funding for homelessness from the state. The second one was infrastructure funding from the state for housing out at Crow Road. And then the third one was infrastructure funding for economic development out at Clear Lake Road.
Like,
Those are cooked. They are still top priorities, still needs, and we've got even more support from our partners in the community that we sometimes don't necessarily find alignment with, and there's a lot of alignment on it. So my recommendation to bring back to you in October is just those 3 top priorities, and then we'll bring the state policy document. I don't really have any revisions, although I'll talk through a couple. I'll dig a little bit deeper into your question, Councilor Evans, in just a second, because there are some policy items that I want to get on your radar. But I don't necessarily think that they need to be our top priorities unless we find out as we move through the fall that they become bigger issues. So those would be the top.
Another quick question. I understand our top 3 priorities, and my particular interest on the development of industrial lands in the Clear Lake Road area. Are we going to have the same fiscal ask, or are we going to ask for additional monies to develop the area as costs are continuing to go up, and the investment that we need is going to be even more pronounced over the next few years, particularly and I know that Councilor Groves and I and a few other councilors have had some offhanded conversations about what those needs are, and the fact that if we don't get that investment, we are going to miss out on not only the industrial development, but the jobs that come with those developments.
What I would recommend is that if you give me the green light on, yes, those top 3 priorities make sense, I would have internal discussions with our staff to identify what the numbers are, the figure that we would request, to see if we need to refine that, and then bring that back as a recommendation. Because, for instance, I think our numbers were 7 million for unhoused response. And we know now very clearly that we've got a $5 million gap for holding the line of what we're providing. So I would feel more comfortable coming back with a $5 million request for the remainder of the biennium versus the $7 million. I want to talk with our team, Sarah, Christy, Matt, and others, and get guidance on that. Same thing with where we are with housing infrastructure, because it also could be changing some of the timelines that we've put into our documents that we would be utilizing again. So
I think that we need to make sure that our fiscal ask is up to date and commensurate with what our needs are.
Yep. And our needs might be, we need $20 million, but I don't think that's a realistic ask of the legislature. So we may say we need 20 million, and we're asking for 5 million as seed funds for this year related to the infrastructure piece. It is, the last time that I looked at it, it was an $80 million project, and we were asking for 8.
Right.
We can always ask for 80 million, but we're not going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even get much bites on the 8.
Right.
So, okay.
Okay.
Switching gears just to talk a little bit about what's on the radar. So there's there's three different policy packages that I want to dive on into. And one of them is related to the last year. So city council adopted, and I'm not as articulate on this one as I should be. There's I would need Amy Cameron here to help me, but city council adopted the application review fee cap, $10.
Right.
It was litigated, it's been in limbo. At the legislature, there was a bill that Representative Nathanson put forward that would allow municipalities to set that rate. That bill was negotiated to not move forward with Representative Gamba and Representative Helfrich, Republican and a Democrat. Gamba's the Democrat, Helfrich is the Republican, to come back during the interim and have a discussion on a statewide broad program whereby a universal application and a universal fee could be paid. And so that work group has been occurring. Amy and I are sitting in and listening on the work group, participating to see if there's legislation that comes out of that. And that could be one of the bills that more than likely there will be a bill that comes on out that sets this at the state level. And that it wouldn't necessarily, I need to work with Amy to figure out, does this align with adopted council policy currently? Or is it something that's outside of that? Knowing that it is a fairly contentious issue, if it's not clearly articulated within adopted policy, then we would want to bring it back. We'll bring it to you either way, but we want to bring it back and have that discussion as to where we want to be. So that item is going to be coming.
That is super. Is there, sorry, I'm jumping in, but, we're in litigation on our fee. If the legislature passed something that did align with what we did, does that take us out of litigation, or do we still continue to litigate, or does that end up with a judge somewhere saying this is a moot point now because it's now empowered by state legislation?
That'd be a question for Catherine.
Okay.
My understanding was that if the bill that Rep. Nathanson had put forward had passed, it would make the litigation moot at that point. It would say, okay, well, it's state law. And that was why we were supportive of it, because it would affirm local authority. Okay, so that's one bucket. Second bucket, and this one is, I'm just gonna put it onto the table. And it's just for reference and a heads up, because we may be coming back and having a longer conversation with you. There is a discussion related to the state statutes that oversee or authorize local ability to issue public intoxication fines. And so there's one for being intoxicated under alcohol, public consumption and alcohol, and you would have a fine for that. There's one for marijuana. If you are visibly intoxicated in public, there's a fine for that within state statute. When Measure 110 was passed, they have not kind of caught up the statutes, state statutes that allow for local governments, and we're actually exempt or prohibited from setting fines for public intoxication. So as you remember, under Measure 110, there are with the decriminalization of it, that there's not a fine for the holding the substance. So one of the things in Portland and have been being discussed within the public safety area is, okay, well, right, but at the state level, we've got these fines. If somebody's publicly intoxicated, we can fine them. And so that has been a discussion that is starting to occur. And right now, looking through all of what we have as policy direction, it's not clear where city council would be on it. So if we do move forward with this as a policy item that would be being brought forward this year, then there'll be an internal discussion about where we are on it, getting Chief Skinner, Manager Maderi, bring that to IGR, get direction, and then bring it to council. So that one, if that does move forward this legislative session, that would need to go through the full process that we would start from start to beginning to end. So that one is out there trying to gather more information and figure out what it would be, but it's something that's there. Having
So,
said that,
Ethan,
yes,
well, one of the things that I'm a little bit reticent on is for us to start putting into ordinance language things that are not necessarily enforceable, or having the police handing out tickets to people that well, they probably should be doing some other things with their time than that, unless there is a real public safety issue in terms of what happens in that realm. I mean, how do you determine if somebody is high on mushrooms or something else of that nature? I'm just bringing that up because we have shortages in personnel and staff with our police department, which most of the other cities do as well. Putting another law on the books that basically virtually doesn't mean anything if we can't really enforce it, or we're giving out tickets and assessing fines that we'll never be able to collect. Seems to me like more of a waste of time and energy on everybody's part, let alone council taking this up.
yep, I think that that's one of the reasons why this would need to come back and have a full engagement. If it does become an item, my recognition of this topic is that there will be robust discussion among this body, among full city council. And so that's why I just wanted to put it on your radar, so that it's not something that comes up in October and you say, where did this come from? Did you know about this? Early and often, let's give you what I'm kind of seeing so that you're informed. Recognizing that, yeah, there'll be robust discussion. On that issue, there is, and that concept will go through, either it starts in the House Judiciary and it goes over to the Senate Judiciary, or it starts in the Senate Judiciary, and that's Senator Brzezinski's territory. So I think he shares many of the insights or concerns that you just brought up as well, Councilor Evans. On that topic though, Measure 110, it is very, very active. There's a lot of funding, private funds that are going on into initiating lobbying and support on different bill concepts, to either full repeal of 110 to major remedies, changes to it. So we're monitoring those conversations. I know that Chief Skinner is engaged both on the conversations from his role as chief and also his role on OACP, which is the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police. And so as those items start to crystallize, we will be back with, if we don't have existing direction, we will be back to talk more about it. If we do have existing direction, we'll come back and say, this is how we're interpreting this, your direction on these issues. Okay. Now the last and biggest one, HPAC, the Governor's Housing Production Advisory Council. And over a slow summer, I added on to all the subcommittee meetings, and there's literally, I think, 2 or 3 subcommittee meetings a week, and they're all an hour and a half to 2 hours long, and they are all deep. And so reference, the governor created the Housing Production Advisory Council. She appointed a number of members. There's nobody from this region, nor is there anybody from a city. There's, again, I think that there might be one county person from a housing agency on the council. So it's very, very focused on housing development and financing professionals. And the development is from engineers and architects to also developers themselves. And so and some of the groups are really interesting. So in the codes group, there's just basically like cut red tape. Here's these recommendations where we're going to cut red tape, which basically would gut a bunch of adopted local government policies, and which we would push back against because we say, no, that is the role, that is the authority of the city council. That's what our state constitution grants as a home rule city. Whether or not we like the proposal or not, we say that's not the state's job. That's authority that's given to city councils. So there's a lot of that's happening in theirs. But then on the public infrastructure discussion, there's to put forward a state fund for infrastructure in cities, and they say, well, do we want to put it as a loan? And my input on those committees is to say, no, it's not a loan. We can issue debt if we want to. We want direct funding. You need to start paying for infrastructure. And so there's that. And then the financing one, in which I was in today, there was a number of discussions related to full-fledged revenue redesign, the impacts of Measure 5 and 50, and being able to create new approaches to property tax revenues to stabilize local governments. So it's kind of the full gamut.
And on the infrastructure, are we talking about roads? What are we talking about on the
Roads,
public
water.
infrastructure, roads, water, all the regular stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we including electrical lines in that, or is that handled separately by EWEB?
I would say that we tend to, like, for instance, on the Clear Lake, or excuse me, on the Crow Road project, we said we've got a little bit of money to help buy down some of the costs for electrical, but a lot of times it's just EWEB's going to cover that. If they want to incentivize that, they can, but our role in it is stormwater, sewer, roads, curb gutter, sidewalk, those that, transportation, and then if there's some level of parks, right? What our SDCs go to.
Right. The reason I'm bringing that up, and Greg knows what I'm talking about here. When you talk to some of these manufacturers, especially in the tech industry, they have high energy needs. So it's a different type of electrical line that goes in than just even regular commercial. It's high voltage, probably need a substation out there. I mean, it's considerable infrastructure, but these are also the companies that are ready to locate if there's some shovel-ready ground.
I will clarify that when we're discussing the HPAC, it's the Housing Production Advisory Council.
Okay.
And then there's an economic development piece. And so I think that when we talk about economic development, like with regional solutions, which Mayor Menace is on the regional council, those are discussions that we could definitely have that to say, oh, our needs around Clear Lake are that we may need an increased electrical infrastructure.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was flagged. Because it's just different than your average. Well, manufacturing draws a lot of electricity anyway.
And so
Ethan,
yes, Councilor.
going back to the HPAC discussion here, and I know that we can't fix this retroactively, but I am concerned about the fact that there's virtually no representation from this area, whether that be industry people or other folks, experts. Where are the 36,000 units that the governor proposed going to be located? Is that going to all be in Portland Metro, or are we going to be considered those of us who are outside of the metro area, down the valley and out into Redmond, Bend, and Sisters, for any kind of investment in housing and housing infrastructure. We have needs, and it seems very clear that and I know that the large sucking sound is coming from Portland, but I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Mayor, and hopefully I'm not too pedantic in terms of beating this drum, but this is the state of Oregon and not the state of Portland.
Yeah, Councilor Evans, I would say that, one of my, roles is to continue to position Eugene and our region as best as I can in those conversations. And League of Oregon Cities, I've requested and received we're gonna have a meeting, I think tomorrow, about how do we strategically respond during the public comment period, starting now up through when we get to the legislative session, about the lack of representation from cities, as well as I'm putting together testimony of our region. And it's not just me. So when at a housing meeting this summer that was hosted here from the Housing Alliance, Commissioner Buck was there. The two of us cornered the governor's housing advisor, Matt Scheibold, and both of us said, hey, there's nobody from this region. And yeah, the city of Eugene put forward an application from Alyssa Hanson, our planning director, and Commissioner Buck put her name on it. And he responded in a political manner saying, yeah, we got representation from across the state. And so I think that the question continues to be, and the work that we do is to ensure that Eugene is represented as best as we can from the investments that we make at a statewide table, whether that's related to allocation of funding or whether that's related to policy decisions that will have impact on communities outside the Portland metro area. So yes, to your question, we're engaged as we can, and my role, it sometimes is as the thorn in the side and the rock in the shoe on many of these conversations, because I don't necessarily get invited to the party, but I show up anyway and provide input. So on the HPAC,
the other thing is, strategically, do your elected officials need to get involved in terms of taking the gloves off and shaking up some of these folks as the discussions move forward? Is that helpful, or is that more would more push us even further down the down the hole than we already are? I mean, if we say something to the governor or say something to other legislators to say, look, hey, wait a minute, we have needs too.
I think that we do that on a regular basis, and we pick where it's going to be the most appropriate and most impactful. And I would say with the HPAC, what we're going to have is, so I'm going to switch into answering that question and also move the conversation forward. HPAC, more than likely, the governor's going to initiate some bills that will be placeholder bills on HPAC items, because the process for finalizing their recommendations isn't going to wrap up until December. There's some deadlines to be able to get bills written and moving forward. So she's going to probably have a suite of bills related to the HPAC recommendations that will be placeholders, and also moving House Bill 3414 forward from last year, coming forward again. And that one, as you may recall, had the creation of a housing production and accountability office, and that would have impact on local governments. So what we will do, and I'm already starting this work internally, is working with all of our staff, is to come up with, here's the list of what the HPAC recommendations are. Here's what they are stating. If they impact any existing city code or city policy, here's what it is. Here would be our proposed position. and then be able to bring that through back to this table at successive meetings to walk you through and say, okay, this is where we are. This is based upon council direction and these policies that are coming forward. Here's where we will land. And that's within IGR committee will have the discussion. And ideally, if it's not an existing policy and our position is in alignment with existing policy, then IGR would then need to weigh in and give direction. And so there's going to be more and more work on what's coming out of the HPAC. It's a lot right now, and it's going to get refined by the HPAC themselves. All the subgroups are sending reams and reams of recommendations, and then HPAC actually has to have public comment and go through that process. So we'll see what happens then. Okay. That is it for me under number 5. Oh, the last thing is that I'm working with Brooke to get an IGR work plan pulled together. And basically that'll be activities throughout the year. And so once I get that put together, I'll probably bring it back and share it with you at our October meeting. Okay. And that way you just get a sense of what's happening in the IGR world on a calendar basis. And that's it for me.
All right. Do we, any questions, any feedback? Committee members?
Greg, I do have a question if I can jump in.
Go for it, Mayor.
So I am wondering about the Peace Health decision. And also recognizing that there's Senator Manning is moving forward on healthcare for all. And just wondering if that, I can't remember what we have in terms of our healthcare priorities or health priorities. I'm just sort of putting a pin in that, wondering if something is going to emerge that the city might take a stand on. I don't know.
I would say on the Peace Health item, Sarah's going to be giving an update on Monday, and there will probably be robust discussion from council and likely direction. I think we can take that. And then regarding Senator Manning's healthcare for all, you know, I would ask if there's like the process says, if this is an item of issue and interest and gets brought up to IGR to take a policy position, or the city council takes a policy position, I would probably provide insight as to the work that's being done, limit of our resources, and how does it impact us? Could we just write a letter? Do we sign on to something? But heavily lobbying on that would be something I would want to spend some time thinking for recommendation of.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to pin you down. I was just thinking that this is going to be a topic, right? Yeah. So just sort of anxious.
I was going to say, and Mayor, this has kind of been a progression in kind of loss of healthcare across the board in our area. I know that Oregon Medical Group has been losing doctors. Other medical groups and facilities have been losing staff. And for us not to have a viable hospital location in the city limits of Eugene, it's not only just embarrassing from the perspective of us being the second or third largest, depending on the day of the week, the second or third largest city in the state, but from a regional perspective and from, you know, a healthcare capacities perspective, the closure of the university campus of Peace Health is, I think everybody understands, it's more than a bad thing. So I'm looking forward to Sarah's presentation on this next week, but we're going to have to figure out some really strategic moves in terms of being able to either replace that facility in one way or another, or attracting another, hospital group to come in and develop plans for providing service in our area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fire alarm test in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
FYI. So I think we're on to items of interest or items for committee members and good of order. So Mayor, given yours, are there others?
Where are we at now with, before I make this phone call after this meeting to a certain individual, where are we at with the baseball conversation?
I think you're gonna get an update on that also on Monday from the city manager.
Okay, well then, I'll wait to make that phone call until after Monday.
Anything else?
No?
Okay, so we will be first Wednesday next month, back here with more information.
We're back. Thank you.
Right then, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, this meeting is adjourned.
Have to flee the fire.
Yep. All right, take it easy.